Hey, welcome back to Past and Present, and today we're stepping into one of the wildest turning points of World War II. It's 1941, Nazi Germany's riding high, until Hitler rolls the dice on a plan so ambitious it backfires spectacularly. We're talking about the invasion of the Soviet Union, the desperate grab for oil, and the bloody showdown at Stalingrad. How did it all go so wrong? Stick around to find out, and let's jump right into the past. By 1941, Hitler's war machine was unstoppable, or so he thought. He'd conquered most of Western Europe, and now he set his sights on the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa kicked off in June, with 3 million German troops storming across the border. Hitler was cocky. He said the Soviet Union was a house of cards, just kick in the door, and it'd collapse. He figured 6 weeks tops, and he'd be sipping coffee in Moscow. But the Soviets had other plans. By December, the Germans were stalled outside Moscow, shivering in the brutal Russian winter. Then the Red Army hit back, hard, pushing them away from the capital. Worse, Germany's supply lines were crumbling. They'd been getting oil, grain, and metals from the Soviets under a shaky alliance. Now that was gone. And then, the game changer. December 7th, Pearl Harbor. The U.S. enters the war, and suddenly Hitler's facing a two-front nightmare. He knew America's factories could churn out tanks and planes faster than he could blink. To win, he needed to knock out the Soviets fast, and that meant oil. Fast forward to 1942. Hitler's got a new plan, Operation Blau or Case Blue. The goal? Secure the oil fields in the Caucasus. Think Maikop, Grozny, Baku. Without that fuel, his tanks and planes were toast. Plus, he'd grab Ukraine's fertile farmlands to feed his army. If he pulled it off, he'd cripple the Soviets and maybe stand a chance against the Allies. The plan was bold. Army Group South would split into two. Army Group A would race south for the oil, while Army Group B set up a defensive line along the Don and Volga rivers. But here's the catch. Germany was stretched thin. Their forces were tied up besieging Leningrad and fighting near Moscow, leaving just 1 million men for Blau. Hitler had to pad his numbers with Romanian and Italian troops. Brave, but under-equipped. No match for Soviet T-34 tanks or the Germans' own Flak 88s. Logistics were a mess, too. Supply lines stretched hundreds of miles over rough terrain, and fuel was already scarce. Oh, and Hitler. He underestimated the Soviets again. They had millions of troops and were building new armies daily. This was a gamble, and the odds weren't looking good. June 28, 1942. Blau launches. The Germans catch Stalin off guard. He'd expected another push on Moscow, not the South. Soviet defenses collapse, and the Red Army retreats in chaos. Voronezh falls fast, and it looks like Hitler's on a roll. But the Soviets slip away, avoiding the trap he'd set. Then, Hitler gets impatient. On July 23rd, he rewrites the script. Forget phases. Now he wants Army Group A to grab the oil and Army Group B to take Stalingrad, all at once. Why Stalingrad? It's a major industrial city on the Volga, perfect for choking Soviet oil shipments. He's so confident, he even pulls troops from the south to reinforce other fronts. Big mistake. Army Group A reaches Maikop in August, only to find the oil wells torched by retreating Soviets. Meanwhile, Army Group B, led by General Paulus and his 6th Army, slugs it out toward Stalingrad. By late August, they're at the city's edge. But the Soviets are ready. Stalingrad turns into a nightmare. General Vasily Chuikov's 62nd Army digs in, determined to hold the city at all costs. Civilians stay too, caught in the chaos. The Germans bomb it to rubble, but that backfires. The ruins become a defender's paradise. This isn't blitzkrieg anymore. It's street-by-street slugfest. Soviet snipers rule the shadows, picking off Germans and spreading panic. Hitler fixates on the city. It's personal now, while Stalin pours in men to save his namesake. Outside, Soviet counterattacks stretch Axis lines thin. Supplies dwindle. German troops are eating horses just to survive. Their tanks can't match the T-34s, and the Luftwaffe's losing the skies. By November, Sixth Armies got 90% of Stalingrad, but they're exhausted. The Soviets cling to the Volga, reinforced by a steady stream across the river. Then, on November 19th, the hammer drops. Operation Uranus, Soviet forces, over 1 million strong, smash through the weak Romanian flanks. 4 days later, they link up, trapping the Sixth Army inside Stalingrad. Hitler's furious. He orders the Sixth Army to hold, promising an airlift and a rescue mission. Neither works. The Luftwaffe can't deliver enough, and the relief force under von Manstein gets bogged down. By January 1943, the Sixth Army's starving, frozen, and out of ammo. Paulus surrenders, despite Hitler promoting him to field marshal as a last-ditch morale boost. The toll? 500,000 Axis losses, over 1 million Soviet casualties, and tens of thousands of civilians dead. Stalingrad's the bloodiest battle of the war, and it breaks Germany's back. The Soviets surge as a superpower, Hitler's myth of invincibility cracks, and the road to Berlin opens. So what's the takeaway? Hitler's greed for oil and his reckless gambles turned 1941's promise into 1943's disaster. Stalingrad wasn't just a battle. It was the moment the Third Reich started to unravel. What do you think? Could Hitler have won if he'd played it safer? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this trip through history, smash that like button, subscribe to Past and Present, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, where we'll uncover more secrets from the past. Take care.